Hello and welcome, guys, to Cyber Diaries episode 31. We have another amazing guest with us, Nick Widdop. I guess just to start, Nick, first of all, thank you for coming along.
Thank you for having me.
So, Nick, if you can just share, I guess, for our audience who, if by any chance they don't know what you do, can you just give a brief explanation, obviously, what you currently do?
Yeah, no problem. That's absolutely fine. So, yeah, my name's Nick Widdop. I am a proud Northerner. So, if any of your guests is listening today and they don't understand the word I'm saying, then you're not the first and you're not the last. We tend to miss a few vowels and consonants in our words. But yes, a little bit about myself. So, I've just about finished off 6 years in cybersecurity recruitment. Yeah, pretty much from when I left university, I went straight into recruitment. Started off at Reed and was doing the UK defence sector. So anything from sort of speaking to CISOs all the way down to SOC and everything in between, and both technical and GRC as well. So just getting a good grounding, a good understanding of the UK market. And then for the latter 4 years, I was covering off the vendor startup market across Europe and a little bit of the US at the back end of it as well at Trident Search. So that was really cool to understand the ecosystem of, yeah, like you say, seed to Series B, sometimes Series C, but getting a good understanding of where the money and the investments in the security market lie, and learning all about different products as well. It was a really good 4 years. And then yeah, literally about 2 months ago, I stepped further into the security world into a my first sales role. It was always the plan. It's come a couple of years before I actually planned it, but it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And yeah, we're 2 months in now, and yeah, absolutely loving it at Claritas. So yeah, I'm sure I'll explain a little bit further as we delve into the pod.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm always fascinated. I'm myself, a kind of a career changer. So it's always fascinating to see people's, journey through different fields and different segues into. So, what would you say, sort of inspired your journey from recruitment into sales, and how you kind of planned this journey, along?
Yeah, well, do you know what? Very early on, I spotted that it was going to be the next step. And I always said to my fiance, my wife, that I will make the move into it at some point. And I always had in mind when I'm 30. Now, you might be looking at me now, Marius, and going, God, is he not 30 yet? He's got a few wrinkles on his head. The wing backs are starting to come in here. But no, I'm 28 now. So it's come a little bit earlier than I planned.
Mhm.
But the reason that I always had this in mind, I always had it in the crosshairs, is because firstly, I've seen a lot of ex-recruiters actually kind of go into the field as well. When I was very early on, Jackson Smithies, I had an eye on him because he was in Manchester and he was like probably the lead recruiter at the time, and then he's gone into the sales world. And then most recently, Rosie Anderson as well. So I've seen that it's quite a common sort of segue into the field. So that was always the plan. I think I think one of the other reasons was when I was at Trident, pretty much I would say that they are at the top of the mountain. And what I mean by that is they are extremely good, and I only think highly of them. I left on very good terms with them, and I will always sort of speak highly of them. I think there's some other good players in the space that kind of push Trident to where they need to be as well. You got the likes of Hubscale who are quite new, in Tasso, Hampton North in the US, and Aspiron as well. So I'd say them four or five agencies are probably the leading ones in the recruitment game, which I would say is a good thing for the industry. I think it's like you've got them four or five agencies that are leading the way and pushing one another to be really good. But what I'd say is I would be biased and I would say Trident were the best, and therefore that's why I never really looked around for another recruitment gig. I was like, okay, this is it now. This is we are speaking to the sexiest vendors. We are speaking to the top people in the industry, the leading founders coming out of Israel, US, UK, all across EMEA as well. So I was like, cool, I'm at the forefront of the industry here, speaking to the people that are the movers and the shakers that are moving the needle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was always the plan never to sort of go into another recruitment gig. And then yeah, literally about about 2 months ago. A person I used to work with at Trident moved to Claritas. Got back in touch and said like, look, we think you'd be really good at this. Let's have a chat and let's see if you fancy it. And then we had the chat, and I thought it's come a couple of years soon, but do you know what? Let's give it a go, because that was another thing I wanted to sort of move a little bit out of the comfort zone. And like you say, I'm 28 now, and I always have it in the back of my mind is when I'm approaching 40, obviously I'll be 38. I'll have 10 years in the sales game in a sector that's only going to get bigger. Um, and I'll have still so much more to give. So I think, in 10 years' time, I've always got to have that mindset of like, cool, how are you in the industry? So whilst it's a lot to learn at the moment, I'm enjoying it.
Good stuff. Do you think that skills developed in recruitment helped you in towards the sales journey? Do you think that anything that you learn in that recruitment journey is actually set you up for success? And do you think there's still a lot more to learn?
Both, both, absolutely. So, I'd say recruitment's hard. Recruitment is a hard gig because the main reason being is that when I say that your product is your people, I'm not trying to. It's a very dehumanizing way of sort of putting it, but yeah, essentially your product is people in this way, and it's one of the only industries where your product can change its mind at any point. There's so much, like a car doesn't just randomly go, I don't want to go home with this person, or anything like that. But a person has their own life, and anything can happen. Relationships can break down, counter offers can happen, the location changes, deaths, whatever it might be, all has an impact on the recruitment process. So as such, the resilience that you build up in recruitment is second to none. And I always tip my hat off to recruiters, because yeah, it's constantly changing. Um, that being said, I think it's given me a tough skin now to go into the sales world. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not going to have sort of a roller coaster ride in this world as well. There's obviously going to be changes, but I think the 6 years in recruitment has given me a really good grounding to go into to what I'm expecting. The sales life cycles are obviously going to be similar but different. Sales life cycles are a little bit longer in the product space, I would say. It's my understanding that, roughly we're looking at 6, 9, 12 month sales life cycles in the product space, whereas in recruitment, you're ideally looking at sort of 1 month to 2 months maximum if you're doing it right from pickup. Obviously, the textbook one is,
Yeah.
you speak to a client on a Monday, you get exclusive 25%, and you get one interview on the Wednesday and an offer out on the Friday. But let me tell you, that is it happens, but it's extremely rare. So you're kind of
Yeah.
looking for about a 1 month turnaround. So yeah. But to answer the latter part of your question there, Marius, oh, I've got a hell of a lot to learn. I'm not saying that I'm coming into this with the game cracked. I'm coming in at a bit of a weird space. It's kind of like I'm a newbie, but I've also got 6 years experience. So I'm a little bit of a strange skill set coming into it. So what I would say is that I'm bringing in a good network, and I know sort of a lot of people from my time in the game over the last 6 years.
Yeah.
But the key difference is that it's a lot more technical coming into the sales world. I've got to understand pretty much a jack of all trades when I was in the recruitment game, understand all the technologies, what's good, what's bad, like how much experience have you got on this sort of specific product. But coming into the sales world, it's a lot more inch wide, mile deep, and I've got to sort of, for in my role, understand CTI tools a lot more, DFIR tools a lot more. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, you probably stepped in a place where if you just go work for one specific vendor, you're selling maybe one tool, which make potentially your life a bit easier. Now you're selling, as you say, DFIR, maybe breach response, maybe one day CISO services. So the learning journey is much more expanding. Now, obviously, you just stepped into the role. What do you think, or what are you seeing currently in the market that's kind of driving the demand for those services, and how is that looking so far that you've seen in 2025?
Oh, good question. Well, one thing that I would say is that I we're in a space now in 2025 where CISOs like yourself and buyers, They don't just buy everything. They don't just buy the newest, shiniest product off the market because for numerous reasons. One is the fact that there is so many products out there. So the market has become, I think saturated is the wrong word because I think cybersecurity is actually in a really good space at the moment, and I think where there's a lot of innovation going on. But what I'm saying is the fact that you can't just put a product in front of someone and say like, look, here's the purchase order, go buy it. The I will never ever ever jump on a call with the likes of yourself and pretend to be more technical or know your estate better than you. And I think that's a common mistake and a common change that is happening in the sales world at the moment. I think that we're now in an age where you do need to be technical to become a seller. Firstly, I'm seeing a lot of vendors and a lot of companies actually sort of open up field CISO roles, field sales roles of technical people moving over to the sales world. And I understand why. I understand that's the way that it needs to be. So that's why, with me being quite new into the space, I am doing everything now to be just to learn my product inside out. So to bring this back to your initial question, Marius, as to how do you sort of see the market, I see the fact of like, look, I there is certain products out there that is an absolute need. Like you see, cloud security is dominating at this moment in time. The likes of Wiz, data security will always be a big player. Application security as well. Obviously, I know that we've recently just done a podcast on the security based, talking about AI. They will be obviously dominating as well. But there's always going to be a need for other sort of stuff as well. It just depends on where you're at in your estate. Now, to finish off on this, I can never sort of like for if you do not need a CTI tool, then you're just not ready for it, and that's fine because you're the SME in the organization, and you will know if your estate is ready for it. All I can do is know my product inside out so that I can help you and ask you the right questions. That they'll be like, okay, no, we actually are having we've got a bit of a problem with our dark web monitoring at the moment, or with some stolen credentials, or whatever it might be. I've got to know my products for about 30, 40, 50 different nuances that I can relate to your organization, whether it's financial, whether it's retail, and make it relevant to yourself. And be like, actually, Nick, do you know what? Yeah, we're having a look at our threat architecture roadmap, for example. It might be good to have a look at your product. And then that's it. I can't come on call number one and be like, oh, I've got these magic beans that will solve all your problems. But there might
Yeah,
be part of the product that is relevant to yourself, which means there's a responsibility on my side to know my product inside out to help you out. But if you're not ready to buy, then that's cool. I've done my job. And look, it might be 6 months down the line, and then you come back in touch, which links back to, sorry, I'm waffling on now, so I'll finish my point, which is why it comes back to my time in recruitment. I know all about that relationships is key and timing is key as well. You might not need my product right now, same as when I was in recruitment. You might not be recruiting right now, but you might be in 6 months. So let's keep in touch for when the timing is right. You can't force a product down someone's throat, Marius.
yeah, yeah. And I think that kind of perfectly leads me into my another question that are kind of similar along the lines. Do you think sales is more persuasion or more education?
Oh, let me think. Is it a cop out if I say both?
No, no, no. It's perfectly fine. It's just interesting to see your perspective and whether that perspective changes when when you probably work more in sales. Because I think, I'm always been talking around. I do a lot of work as well with vendors, whether it's, especially startups who are either, building or helping them guide their go-to-market strategy or helping them to make sure that their product aligns to CISO needs. And I always talk about this thing. I think, in a way, sales cycles, I think, are currently changing a bit because I think kind of things like cold calling, cold outreach is becoming a bit defunct, and people don't like to be sold, as you know, we kind of discussed this earlier a bit. And I think sort of becoming a thought leader in your product niche is becoming more important, because I think once you kind of develop that expertise, you kind of create lead generation by default, as
Yep.
long as whether you building blogs, whether you sharing articles, and sharing useful information on LinkedIn, where you can then sort of hook people in and say, oh, that's an interesting way to look at that problem. Maybe I
Yep.
want to talk to them, and dangling that sort of carrot. So it would be interesting to see how you thinking this is gonna, what's the kind of combination between the two?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I completely agree with what you were saying there. And for me, what I do is again, I feel like I have slotted. I've not really skipped a beat moving from the recruitment to sales. I picked up a new laptop, and again, I've just started speaking to the exact same people that I've already been speaking to. The difference is now I've got a different product. I've not got people, I have got a product this time, and
Yeah,
that's been the main change. And but the conversations and the relationships are what has stayed the same. And that's always been like I always sort of see it as a bit of a networker. Like for example, this morning I have just introduced two guys that I know that one might potentially be moving out to Dubai, and the other one moved out to Dubai 12 months ago to build up a security practice. So it's just a little bit like that, and it's always like, okay, cool. And whilst that is not a direct return on investment like that, it's like you're just helping someone out, you're being a person, and it's not sales, and it's linking to what you were saying there about the cold calling might be a bit defunct. Now, look, I'm not to say that it will never have a place. It will always have a place, but do I think we're now in a time where it's completely, yeah, more along the education and persuasion line, and more along the relationship side? I absolutely do. So I'll go back to the evidence of like when I'm doing a discovery call and I'm asking someone all about sort of like their estate and that. Look, I'm not a seller of identity or attack surface management or pen testing, but I might have a chat with them and be like, oh, do you know what? Actually, in my previous life, when I was a recruiter, I actually spoke to quite a few pen testing vendors. So get in touch with these guys. They're actually really cool, or these have just got the seed round. Did you see? And it's just about having that, yeah, a little bit of, yeah, the education piece around sort
yeah,
of like, okay, well, look, this I can only introduce you. But then when we get into the CTI, it's like, okay, this guy is not just trying to ram my product down his throat. He's giving me alternatives here, which kind of improves said credibility in the end game because not just after a quick buck, I'm not trying to hit this quarter. He's actually concerned about my posture, and it's like, okay, cool, I'll actually take his word for gold. And then they listen a little bit more, and it's like
yeah.
you actually have more genuine conversations. So yeah, just to circle all the way back round, I think it is education and I think it is persuasion. If I was to kind of sit on the fence a little bit with that one.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Now, we kind of touched a bit about, there's always been that conversation, should CISOs be technical? Should they not be technical? There's various interpretations in that. Now, I assume as well, you probably, in your sales journey currently, you probably get to talk to various stakeholders. Now, do you think about how do you need to tailor your messaging, whether you are talking to a CISO, to a board member, or any other business stakeholder?
Oh, I personally, well, I'm not aware of it, but I personally don't think I do tailor much. I don't towards my audience. Um, I like to think of that. Yes, you obviously need to understand who you're speaking to. I understand obviously what you were saying there about the technical CISO and the non-technical CISO, and therefore you've always got to bring in that psychological element of like, okay, what motivates this person? So obviously, when you speak to procurement, you'll be speaking about different parts of the sales life cycle that you were to the sort of the sales engineers and to the CISO. CISO obviously a little bit more strategy, how this will affect you. Obviously, and then if you're bringing in CFO, this is the cost on your business. You don't want to kind of go into too much of the specific CVEs of certain exploits. You don't want to go into that because you'll just lose them, and if you lose them, they'll just switch off. You've always got to think about what motivates that person. Absolutely. So yeah, sorry to yeah, I was starting off by understanding what you thought about if I was wearing a suit and tie or out like that. But no,
No,
yes,
no,
you're
no.
absolutely right in terms of like who you're speaking to will obviously affect what you're looking to get out of that call. That's why again. You can't just rock up. Preparation is key, and you can also disrespect who you're speaking to as well. The person in HR, the person in procurement, the person in finance is just as important as the initial buyer because it very, very rarely involves just one specific buyer. You've got to respect and work with numerous parts of the sales chain for it to work. Otherwise, it just yeah, you can't just be yeah disrespecting that part.
Yeah. I want to pick up a few interesting things as well from your career. So you studied sports psychology.
Hmm.
Do you think does that helped you approach sort of negotiations and handle high pressure sort of sales conversations in any way?
Ooh, maybe. Maybe. I've never really thought about it like that. Um, I always had a so when I left school, um, my initial plan was actually to go into the Marines, or the RAF, depending at the time. But I had to do a year of college before I was there was really I just couldn't go in at 16 or whatever I was looking at. I can't
Mm.
remember at the time now. So I went to college and I did public services, and the course just wasn't. It might have just been Burnley College and the people at Burnley. I know that there's few and
Yeah.
far between that it isn't a great audience, but yeah, essentially I just didn't enjoy the course, and I was just a bit like, I don't know about this actually. So I thought, "Do you know what? I'll drop down a year, restart, and I'll go do A levels." And when I was looking at that time, I was like, "What do I want to do?" And I picked psychology, sociology, and another one I can't remember it, English lit or something like that. But psychology was the main one I wanted to do. I just picked the
Mm.
others because I had to. And I was loving it. And when I was doing my A levels, I was like, yeah, really, really enjoy this. I was just really intrigued by behaviors, how people like just how societies sort of move together, and what sort of impacts them. Or we could have a completely separate podcast all around that and get
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. So then that derived my university thought around obviously psychology, which then specialised in sports psychology. And um, yeah, I suppose a little bit. It's definitely not impacted sales. Psychology and sales go hand in hand. Like exactly to the
Okay.
last question around, okay, you've got to have that emotional intelligence to understand who you're speaking to, what motivates them. And it even brings into the advantages of like parenthood as well. Like you say, like, I've got a 4-year-old and then an impending little girl on the way that's due any minute. And like you say, psychology will always come into it, as to how you sort of approach said people. So yeah, I suppose in an unconscious sort of way, what we were discussing on our previous pod as well, in an unconscious sort of way, I suppose it must have come into.
Yeah, I think it's it's a skill in your arsenal that potentially, helps you read cues and understand people better. And I think it's always going to be, helpful.
Yeah.
We kind of touched a bit about podcasts, and I think I just want to kind of segue into that question. So obviously you run your podcast. Do you think building your personal brand helps you open doors within whether it's recruitment, cybersecurity? Does that translate in any way?
110%. 110%. So what we were saying there earlier about the cold calling will always have its place. It will. It will always have a place, but I'll be upfront. I don't like it. I do not like it, Marius, and I'm sure that you don't like being on the end of them. Now, again, I know that I'll have maybe people in the comments coming for me with the pitchforks and the flames, and I understand that. But I just think in this new age, which I am part of, that the personal brand it's absolutely massive. I really do think that. And I think just with the podcast, I've been able to sort of speak to some absolutely amazing people in the industry. Yours truly, Marius, of course.
Right.
But yeah, it really has opened doors. And yeah, from there, I'm not saying it's the be all and end all. Like you say, there's other parts of it, but it's helped with the brand. It's helped me sort of stand a little bit out from the crowd. Because look, I'm coming from recruitment. Recruitment has tough, tough, tough slack, and rightly so. There's a lot of crap in the industry, but like I say, and I hope I sort of praised them well enough at the start. There is a few cybersecurity recruitment agencies out there that are very good. But yeah, there's more bad than good in the recruitment industry. So hence why a personal brand, you have to sort of stand out from the crowd and show why you're different. And the podcast has definitely helped that.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think, I always say to people, whether you are in a journey into cybersecurity, building, whether it's sharing your learning journey, sharing blogs, posts, it's probably a high ticket item how you can potentially even land careers.
Oh,
Now,
oh yeah, just to echo on that, yeah, in the recruitment space, when I was sort of telling people about that. the amount of people who you might just bump into at a meetup event or a networking event or a conference is your key to success. Yeah, just the doors that it'll open is absolutely massive. Like the amount of people that I speak to, it's like, oh yeah, I just bumped into such and so in the coffee shop, and yeah, we just got chatting, and then yeah, we got an interview from there. It's the way to go in an industry that is notoriously hard to break into. But once you're in, and once you've got them first few years experience, you can be away then.
Yeah, yeah. Just to round it up, we've got last couple of sort of 5 minutes. I wanted to pick up on one thing, which there's a number of people, I think, number of prominent people that made posts about, and I totally agree with them. But do you think customers are fatigued by fear-based selling and FUD? And what do you think about some companies actually, still doing, for example, now in a current case, there's people jumping on the M&S bandwagon and trying to, sell their solutions based on what's happening to someone, while other people are potentially currently suffering and trying to rebuild their operations.
Yeah, I think them ambulance chasers have no place in the industry. Again, I think we've moved on, and those that use that style of selling, they'll very quickly get found out because it links to exactly what we've been saying there. Personal brand and the importance of that is going like that, and I'll say it, the archaic way of selling is going like that, and you'll get found out. And yeah, the cybersecurity industry, it's a big space, but it's a small space at the same time. And very easily can you get a bad name if you do go ambulance chasing. So, like you say, the M&S attack has obviously just very recently happened. And those that are sort of going after them, saying, "Oh, they've done X, Y, and Z wrong," it's just wrong, and it's the wrong impression that you're setting out. So yeah, I think fear-based selling is. I'm surprised it even had a day, but I suppose it was part of the education journey. I think we've matured now as an industry where it's not this new, unheard concept. It's like, okay, everyone's got an appreciation of it. Yes, there's still an education and persuasion part of this, but the way you go about that is not via that route. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And then the last point, I guess, security space host, where do you see, the journey of your pod going, and, where do you see that, transcending your career in the next couple of years? Is there prominent people that you would love to have on your pod that you didn't have? Where do you want the pod to take the direction? And I guess in the near future, we've been talking about, building personal brands. So how do you see that brand expanding, I guess, in the next year or two?
Oh, next year or two might be a bit tough, but look, like, hey, look, if I can do like live pods at RSAs, if I can go over to, yeah, I'll say it, if I can go over to Israel and speak to a few of the founders over there actually in person and do a round table there, that'd be phenomenal. Doing a lot more in-person ones is absolutely where I want to take it, and actually do it at, yeah, maybe like Cyber Week, InfoSec, DTX, Black Hat, and actually doing sort of 5 or 6 on the day, and bringing people together, not and actually be like, yeah, because that's what it's part of. If I can bring together 2 or 3 people on a pod that I've done with in the past at these events, and just get different thoughts, having a bit of a friendly back and forth, yeah, I think that'll be yeah, I think that is an achievable but sort of, yeah, goal to aim for.
Yeah, I think so. I think, if you don't set goals that are, or ambitions that are scary, what are you doing then?
Exactly.
But yeah, I think, once again, thanks for coming along, Nick. It was, as ever, exciting and interesting conversation. It's always good to hear, people's career journeys, their thoughts, and how they go about the business. So thanks for coming along.
Thanks, Marius.
Brilliant. Thanks.